Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin, and we are the Dungeon Dudes.
And sorry to keep you waiting. We know the anger has been building. The rage is boiling over, as everyone wants to know what would happen if everyone decided to play a barbarian in the same party in D&D 5e.
Closing off our series, let's talk about the pros and cons of an all-barbarian party. This brute force, axe to the face, combat-heavy group is obviously going to have a few pros and a few cons. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some concepts for campaigns or adventure or group ideas that you can bring into your game. And we're going to give them an overall ranking and look at how they compare to the other all single class parties. As usual, we're going to be looking at a party of 4 characters. They all need to be different subclasses, but they're all going to be barbarians. They cannot multi-class, and we're going to see how they perform in all pillars of play. That's combat, social, and exploration. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get rolling.
So when I think of an all-barbarian party, I really think of the Viking warriors leaping from their ships into a battle rage to pillage and conquer all that lie before them. I think of like the classic tropes of the orcish barbarians or the dwarven barbarians or Goliath barbarians coming together in that rugged hinterlands and battling against ferocious monsters. I think of games like Valheim. I think of like the Northmen and films like that. And that really is an exciting trope. It really does conjure up like that primal warrior vibe.
Yeah, the sort of Viking warriors were all about brute force, and that was their whole shtick. I mean, going a little bit more modern, the thing that pops into my head when I think of an all-barbarian party is the Expendables.
What?
The Expendables were all like, they weren't subtle. They were just big, beefy old dudes. For the case of the Expendables, it was all like your 80s and 90s action heroes got together and they I don't know, I don't think this actually happened in the movie, but I could see them they're the type of people that would drive a tank through the front door of their enemy and then come out with machine guns and just blow everything up. Not that we have machine guns and tanks, but I feel like the barbarian party is that sort of approach where it's just a group of muscled dudes who are just going to not only break down the door, but break down the whole wall. Yeah. And Kool-Aid man their way into the scenario.
This is also, to go to other games and genres, I think of like the Warriors of Khorne in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, like the Chaos Warriors, the Berserkers, the World Eaters.
I mean, also like you have your orcs.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, if you'd want to play a whole group of half-orc barbarians or just orc barbarians, you can live your 40K or Warhammer Fantasy.
Right, that kind of like everyone doing like the orcish the battle cry. And of course I think with the barbarian group, like the opportunity for like battle cries and like the kind of the low there do I see my father sort of thing, although that's kind of paladin-y nighty, but I do think that kind of like warrior, poet, barbarian. Of course, we can get all of our inspiration from Conan and all that stuff too.
Conan, I mean, God of War jumps into my head, but those are more solo barbarians. But
like, imagine like the team up between Kratos and Conan.
I'm loving it already.
Okay, so like, we're gonna have Kratos, we're gonna have Conan, we're gonna have like, I don't know, Thor. And
is Xena she might be a paladin, you know?
Xena was more of a fighter, I think.
Okay, fair.
Right? But
so was Hercules.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of my like old school TV shows of like who was like an angry warrior fighter, but more fighters there.
And in that respect, you kind of do get like that warriors of epic proportions as well. Like, I think there is something very primal about the barbarian class in general. And so there's kind of this like savage struggle that is to it. And I think that we can really lean into those trips. I really do like the idea of like the Kratos and Conan team up.
Yeah.
Like it could be like a buddy cop movie.
Now I just want to see it. Although I mean, Conan's amazing, but I think that Kratos kind of overshadows him in almost every regard.
Oh yeah, in terms of raw power. Yeah,
Yeah, like Kratos is lifting up whole trees to smash people with, where I think that Conan was more of like your rogue barbarian.
Okay, what about a movie where a bunch of characters, all played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, are teleported to the Conan universe? So you've got Conan,
Kratos, but then you have Last Action Hero, him and Predator.
throw in the Terminator for good
Throw in
measure.
the Terminator, him and like there was one where he was like, what's it called? I don't know. There was one where he was like a military commando. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, his character from Commando and his character from Predator are basically the same character.
And they could all be Schwarzenegger at different points in his life and in his career. So you've got like the young Schwarzenegger and then like Governor Schwarzenegger, all in the
every version of him in Terminator.
So this is just what if everyone plays Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And everybody does their worst or best Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. Get to the chopper.
Yeah, there you go. That's the campaign.
That was my Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. You're welcome. Do it now.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. So subclasses.
Okay.
So we have our theme. What are the 4 subclasses that we're going to bring into play here? There are 2 that immediately off the bat I think are top of the charts. Beyond that, it's actually tough.
Yeah.
I got to give it to our Totem Warrior and our Zealot.
Or AKA Totem Warrior, AKA the Wild Heart.
Well,
yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think that obviously having the bear for the resistance to all the damage types is still hard to pass up. I think that the Wild Heart / Totem Warrior is also one of the few barbarian subclasses that actually gets utility powers and buff abilities for their group. I think there's an argument for this barbarian to pick up the wolf to give advantage to everyone in their party so that not everyone has to be using reckless attack all the time.
Yeah.
And obviously you're going to want kind of the divination powers that you get, the commune with nature, and ultimately the flight is going to be one of the few places where we can get even some kind of flight.
Yeah, this is the case where the Totem Warrior isn't just going to fit. Usually when you play a Totem Warrior, more often than not, most barbarian players go down the route of like selfish, make me strong and impervious to damage. But you might actually want to look at some of the other options to bolster the team, because you're a team of 4 ultra powerful, not going to go down in combat warriors. So what can you do to make them all better?
It's still hard to give up the bear and that universal damage resistance, except for psychic. But I think that there is an argument to be made for the other types. The Zealot, by the same token, I mean, the only thing with the Zealot is that there's no one in this party who's going to bring you back to life if you die.
Yeah, hopefully you get a Rod of Resurrection that somehow you can use. I don't know. You're going to need a lenient DM on this one.
Yeah. You still hit hard, though.
Yeah. The Zealot hits hard and is probably our frontline barbarian.
Yeah. Beyond this, we looked at the Ancestral Guardian and the Storm Herald have some tanky features, but I think in a party where everybody is so tanky, it kind of gets redundant.
Yeah, I looked at each of the barbarians and I was trying to find barbarian subclasses that weren't entirely focused on being tanky and doing damage, because we're getting that already. No matter what, we're going to have 4 tanks who do damage. So what else can they add? I think looking at them, the Beast is actually an interesting pick here, because the Beast has the ability to adapt to situations. Yeah. They can gain a swim speed, a climb speed. They can kind of, no matter what habitat you're in, they can adapt to it. They don't have magic. They don't have the social skills that you need, but at least they bring an element of utility into this party.
Yeah, and speaking of magic, like I also consider the wild magic barbarian, but I think it's got a whole feature that is entirely reliant on having a spellcaster in your party that you can use it on. Yeah. So I don't and it's just too random. I don't think it's going to fill any gaps for us. I think one area that is useful is the giant barbarian gets some benefits to throwing weapons, and ranged combat is going to be a notable weakness that we want to just plug up a little bit in this party.
They're going to have a lot of javelins.
There's going to be a lot of thrown axes and javelins.
But the giant has that cool ability where they get the like weapon that returns to them, and all weapons that they imbue with this magic get the thrown property.
Yeah.
So you can take your great axe and huck it and call it back.
Yeah, and I think pastoral subclasses, like in a very kind of, nobody in this party is explicitly the ranged character or the tank or the support or the healer. Barbarians just don't get deep enough specialization in those roles to really justify that moniker, right? Everybody here is a tanky damage dealer, and I think we just kind of have to accept that and lean into that and roll with the punches.
Now, it's not to say like, yes, this group's obviously going to have a lot of weaknesses, which we'll get to, because they are very much positioned to be mostly damage dealing and mostly tanky. Yeah. But every time I've seen a barbarian at the table, they're so much fun. They're jumping off of ledges. They're climbing up onto monsters. Literally, the amount of times I've seen a barbarian leap off of something and grab a monster by the neck and start just hacking away at it. You get to be a group of just like crazy warriors.
Yeah, and you've got the fast movement. You've got the danger sense to give you advantage on initiative. You've got obviously you've got rage, and you're going to have high strength scores across the board, advantage on strength checks and all that good stuff.
Multiplayer Doom guy.
Oh yeah.
Rip and tear Doom guy until it's done.
Yeah. Yes.
Totally. That is the motto. Rip and tear until it's done.
Until it is done. And so that's where I think the only other area where you can kind of diversify with these characters is someone can resist the temptation to take Great Weapon Master and Polearm Master and maybe consider another feat like Magic Initiate. Even so, one person in this party being able to cast Guidance will help you outside of combat. You could grab Fey Touched or Shadow Touched. Again, you're not going to be using those in combat because that's the problem. When you're raging, you can't cast spells, even the ones that are granted by these feats. So it's mostly to have that out of combat invisibility or teleportation when you need it. Or even just get Ritual Caster just so that you got it.
If somebody has Ritual Caster, you can pick up a bunch of utility spells that you can use outside of combat to help you out with the places where barbarians aren't going to be doing a whole lot. And I will say that each barbarian comes with what I'll call a kit of something that they can do outside of combat. So I don't want to overshadow the fact. I remember hearing on this channel a lot whenever we're like, barbarians are one thing and one thing only. And a lot of people said, you're underestimating the utility of barbarians. Barbarians have utility. Just we're looking at an all barbarian class in comparison to an all cleric class or an all bard class or an all wizard class. And when it comes down to it, having something like one barbarian can talk to animals, one barbarian has like a divination ability, one barbarian can like maybe talk to people a little better than others. It's very minimal, and they are really going to have to push against the boundaries that the walls that they have to try to excel in those areas.
Yeah, and I mean, sure, you can do minor things like some people can have a higher intelligence or wisdom or charisma to fill the gaps, but I mean, when it comes down to it, the way that I look at it is that I assume that everyone is playing creatively. I assume that everyone is making use of their skills. And I think that creative play, utilizing the environment, making good use of your skills are things that every single character can do. And you can even use skills that you don't have an amazing benefit to. I like to look at what is the class giving you that builds on top of those things, right?
And like each class gives you this like appetizer, but it's main course.
Yeah. And so if you aren't the barbarian class doesn't bring anything to the table, though, when it comes to social interaction, and it beyond what any other character could do. And it doesn't really bring much to the table when it comes to exploration either. There's bits and pieces, and so that's where like the criticism sort of comes to. But and with that, I think we should get into how this party performs in each of the pillars of play, because starting off with combat, this party is really good, as you said, at being the unsubtle group of explosive battle tanks that appear on the scene and kill everything in front of them, like the Doom guy.
If you're the enemies, this is like the opposite of the rogues. The rogues are like, you never saw us coming. We set up an ambush. This is like, this is the scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail,
just thinking
where the guards are standing there and the guy's running. Like, you see the barbarians and they're like 100 meters away running at you, and you're just there like, should we run?
Yeah.
And then eventually they're up to you and everybody dies and they just murder the whole castle full of people.
Yeah.
You either run away or die fighting them. Like, they are a wrecking ball.
Yeah, they are. They you know,
they're as subtle as a wrecking ball and as dangerous as a wrecking ball.
There, you can have Miley Cyrus in this arc.
Miley Cyrus riding on the shoulders of the barbarians. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, cannonball.
That's their war song.
I came in like a wrecking ball.
I came in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah. And in that respect, they're like, it's fantastic. Like, the damage output is amazing, especially if you do have more than one character in this party that is going down the Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master route. You drop into a rage and your damage per round is through the roof with this party. Anything that you close the distance with that isn't going to have any special resistances or immunities or ways of avoiding your damage is going to just die.
I also want to point out that the resilience of this party in combat, the barbarians that we've seen at our table, I know many barbarian players have been like, hey, wizard, I don't care if you fireball me, I'm going in. Yeah. Many barbarian players have, we had our one barbarian player jump on top of a dragon and take flight 300 feet in the air and then get thrown off. And then the dragon landed on him, breathed fire on him, and he still got up and cut the dragon's head off. Like, these guys don't care about how much damage is coming at them. They're just going to continue to run forward and kill.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of an interesting thing here. One of the feats we didn't mention earlier that I think is actually kind of interesting here is if someone in the party takes Inspiring Leader, even if there's not an amazing charisma modifier there, that pool of temporary hit points that they all get is effectively doubled for everybody in this party when you're in a rage. And that can be a really big difference between how much healing this party's going to need and how much recuperation they're going to need between combat encounters. Because if they're all raged up, that resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage is really going to carry them through. It effectively doubles the hit point pool of everybody in the party. They already have the D12 hit die. They're already incentivized to have the high constitution modifier. So we got more hit points than anyone else, and those hit points are going to go further because of the resistances.
I know this is doubling down on the barbarian, but I think if you're in an all-barbarian party, knowing that your shtick is that you are going to have to absorb damage in order to deal with combat encounters, a few of your frontliners, probably the Zealot and maybe, I don't know, all of them, could look at the tough feat just to shore up those numbers and make sure that they're so high that they can shrug off nearly anything.
Yeah, and like the Barbarian party could go with like someone who is taking a shield and investing a little bit more on their AC and is using reckless attack a little bit more conservatively. But the thing is that no one in the party is really presenting an ideal target to any combatant in any case. So I don't think that you need to have any one character bearing the brunt of the damage with the Barbarian party. It's
you're
almost
all the brunt.
You're all the brunt, right? Now, here's where it gets less good. If you're fighting someone that is flying, the only thing you can do is throw javelins and axes at them, and the giant barbarian helps with that, but the range is still going to be very short on thrown weapons. Especially with skirmisher type enemies that cause like the conditions for your rage to end, that's going to suck. The intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws for this party are not going to be anything to write home about, and that is where you might want to consider taking resilient. for one or more of these ability scores on multiple party members, just to shore that up a little bit, because this party like could just flat out die to Hypnotic Pattern.
I do think that if you're a DM and you're going to be running a game, an adventure, or a campaign for an all-barbarian party, you want to think of how the barbarians are going to interact with the scenario. I think, like, if you're facing a dragon, give them access to artillery. Maybe they're the defenders of their like Viking camp and they have ballistas and like a giant net that they can shoot. Like, give them options to try to bring the dragon to ground level so that they can engage it.
There is kind of a weird thing where the barbarians, much like the rogues, which is interesting because there's always this discourse of, is Conan a barbarian or a rogue? They also kind of have to approach things differently if they're not dealing with just a straightforward combat scenario.
Yeah, they actually do need to plan and kind of construct the scenario to benefit them.
Yeah, and I mean, magic items can help a lot here, just like it does with the rogues. And in fact, the barbarians are also kind of dependent here because if you start fighting enemies that have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, or immunity to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage from non-magical weapons, you have no inherent way of overcoming that for the most part. So you need magical gear, you need magical equipment. You know, you want to get those boots of flying. That the magic items and equipment can be the real equalizer here in a lot of respects. But again, that's always going to be DM dependent.
With like the other two pillars, when it comes to social, again, if you're the DM, I would let the barbarians use strength for intimidation, because it's really the only way they're getting by in a lot of cases. When it comes to exploration, again, each barbarian kind of has something they can do in exploration. They're never going to be as good as the druids or the rangers, but they at least, I'll put them at like an even level. They're not worse necessarily than some of the other classes that don't have any options. And as a matter of fact, those little nuggets that each of them has at least gives them something.
I mean, they don't do much better than the fighters.
They do a little bit better than the fighter, I think.
Maybe, right? They just don't have a lot of tools. Like, again, they're wholly dependent on the player's ingenuity and creativity, which is a force that is present everywhere. And
I mean, we do have things like beast sense and speak to animals.
Sure, you do, but like you don't have as widespread effort. And I think that that's always the thing is that, like, you know, creativity gets magnified when you have better tools. And so when you have more potent tools to draw on, and that's why, like, for me, you know, I get drawn to the spellcasters because you see how those tools allow you to solve problems in much more inventive and nonlinear ways, right? Like, any group of characters can be like, oh yeah, we want to get the artillery out.
Yeah.
Right. It's that's not necessarily something that is unique to the barbarians, right?
Yeah.
And any group of characters can get clever with rope, if you will. Any group of characters can decide to climb a wall. The barbarians are, you know, are going to be good at really good at athletics, right? And this is where, you know, if someone is taking guidance, fine, through Magic Initiate, that'll cover them on that respect. But yeah, I just feel like the exploration pillar for the barbarians is kind of
all that I'm saying is that, like, combat, I'm giving them an A. Social, I'm giving them a D unless they're allowed to use strength for intimidation. And for exploration, I'm giving them like a C+.
You're very generous. I'm giving the barbarian party a C in combat. And I'm giving, like, across the board C's and D's.
Really?
Yeah, because again, if we're being merciful and we are tailoring the encounters to the party, sure. But if I designed an adventure and I designed and I said, here, Kelly, roll a D12 and you have to play that party through this adventure, right? And you rolled Barbarian, there's a possibility there's going to be encounters that are just going to shut down this party. So in an objective sense, when we talk about the range of encounters the barbarians can face, there are just some encounters that a balanced party would do fine with. a all wizard party, an all paladin party, an all cleric party all bard party would do fine with. But there are just certain types of encounters that will just utterly and completely no sell the barbarians.
I mean, they fall short against any magical opponent, any flying opponent, unless it's a straightforward fight. Like they do great in a war campaign.
Yeah.
Against like a living enemy that maybe has a few spellcasters, but spellcasters that they can run up to and hit with an axe.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, they're gonna crush it anytime where that's what they're able to do.
4 barbarians versus an army, barbarians win.
Yeah. If you just take 4 barbarians and put them up against like, and this is where like the traditional monster manual does a lot of disservice, because like, if you put the 4 barbarians up against any sort of bag of hit points monster that is just making basic attacks against armor class against them, yeah, they're going to tear them to shreds, right? But as soon as the monster does anything other than run at you and attack your AC, the barbarians start running into problems. Right? Problems that they don't have an answer for, right? Even a spellcaster, like this is actually the deadliness of that scenario. Yeah, the barbarians rage up, but like 3 out of the 5 barbarians in this party, a fireball gets right around their damage resistances. If they're going up against a group of spellcasters, even if those spellcasters aren't specifically using attacks that are going after their intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, and they're just and the spellcasters are just doing attacks against AC with things like Eldritch Blast or Firebolt, now their damage resistance component of their rage is completely negated.
They can still, though, with their speed, like once they get up to the spellcaster, that spellcaster's dead in a turn.
Potentially, yes.
Now, what do they do against like a force cage? Or
what do they do against the wall of force?
Wall of force,
right? And yeah, the spell and then if you do combine that with anything like any sort of enemy that has effective ranged attacks and also flies, like a dragon, like the all barbarian party, yeah, they can throw their weapons and maybe they'll get creative and throw each other at the dragon, but like a basic dragon battle, it particularly as it gets into higher levels, is going to be a problem for this party.
They have to go to the dragon's lair and like find it before it gets out, and like, but even in the lair, like that's not an easy battle.
Because contrast that even against the fighters, right? At least with the fighter party, there's a battle master in there that has the ability to knock the dragon prone and thus knock it out of the sky.
Maybe, I mean, you might want one of your barbarians to have Polearm Master and Sentinel. That's one of the ways to lock down a flying creature. But first you have to get them on the ground first, then lock them down.
So in my opinion, like I don't want to minimize the fact that like, yes, they kill everything they touch. But as soon as the variety, like again, in contrast to the paladins also kill everything they touch. But the paladins take more damage from conventional encounters, but the paladins just survive better.
So when we talk about the pros and cons of this party, I mean, we've kind of already mentioned it in pretty big detail. I do think really that the All Barbarian party is unfortunately, I think, one of the weakest we've looked at.
I agree.
Which is tough because I think barbarians are so much fun in a well-rounded party. They're a great like protector, like mama bear to the spellcasters and like squishy guys. When you pair a barbarian with like a rogue, a wizard, and a bard, you kind of have something beautiful there. But like I've seen barbarians do some of the most fun and exciting and over-the-top action movie shenanigans that I've ever seen in D&D. But when that's the whole party, like you said, there's so many things that they could come up against, which is why if you are going to run an all-barbarian party, the DM needs to be aware and build sort of a scenario, because like it's not being lenient as a DM. It's structuring an adventure that they will have to face maybe a dragon, but you have to be aware of what their limitations are and what they're going to have to do to accomplish their goals. A dragon as an endgame boss for a mini arc with an all-barbarian party is actually awesome because it's a threat to, like, your group of Vikings. And how are they going to deal with the dragon? And then you have a bunch of minions like the dragon cult or something that they can just sweep through.
I agree. But if we're coming down to this, I think that, like, the limitations of the All Barbarian party are so glaring that, yeah, I agree with you. They, like, as far as our leaderboard goes, they are a far cry, but conceptually, I do love it.
Yeah, like, the concept's cool. I think that it would be really fun to play it, but I'm putting them overall. I don't want to give them a D because they're not like a trap. There's fun to be had here. I think, though, I have to give them a C overall.
I'm going to go with the D tier.
Okay.
Here. Yeah, I think in the end, it's like the only thing they can do really, really well is kill people in melee. And as important as that is to D&D, it is a game about fighting monsters after all. There's just too many monsters that don't want to, that do more than that. And the barbarians don't have enough overall answers as a party to that, right? And so that's where I think the barbarian is such a perfect character in the context of a group where they can have the support of the magic users, where they get to be the front line. They get to be the bruiser, which is needed by the rest of the group. But that thing alone, at a certain point, it's just too much of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that concludes our look at all of the different single class parties.
Sorry to make the barbarians angry. Maybe they can make a little anger management group together.
They wouldn't be good at anger management.
No.
They rely on that to do the only thing they're good at.
Yeah.
If you disagree with us, I want to hear how you would overcome a lot of the magical issues that would come up for a barbarian party. In the comments below, tell us your tricks and if you'd be excited to play an all-barbarian party in D&D.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible with the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please consider becoming a supporter of the channel by following the links down below.
And if you want to see us playing some D&D, check out our adventures in the world of Draconine, which airs Tuesday evenings here on YouTube. You can check out all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we got plenty more videos in our What If Everyone Plays the Same Class video. They're all up right over here.
Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.